Let me introduce you to Tracy. In fact, let me introduce you to Tracy and James. Tracy and James have been married for 7 years. They've been together for about 14 years. They've got 3 children, Tamara and Keely and Justin. Unfortunately, Tracy and James have now decided to split up. And what they've opted to do is contact some representation. But they've taken 2 entirely different routes. Tracy's opted to go with the McKenzie Friend. In fact, Tracy contacted ourselves here at McKenzie Picave. James has opted to go down perhaps a more traditional route in contacting a solicitor. Tracy came to see us. We had an hour-long conversation while she explained what was going on, what the situation was, what the history was. And at the end of that conversation, we agreed what our next steps were. Because it was the initial consultation, obviously there's no fee for that. It's just us here at McKenzie Picave trying to understand what's going on. James goes to see a solicitor who offers the first 30-minute consultation entirely free of charge. But during that 30 minutes, James doesn't get any opportunity at all to talk about his case. What he gets is the solicitor explaining what divorce is, the solicitor explaining how they conduct themselves, the solicitor going through various protocols about their terms and conditions, and the solicitor gaining basic details from James, which revolve around getting a bank card from him in order that they can secure their fees. They explain to James that the cost for him to conduct the divorce and sort out the children and sort out their finances will be in the region of £10,000 to £12,000, and obviously if it reaches any complications, that figure could escalate to £20,000 fairly easily. And they asked James if he's happy to go ahead, if he could just deposit with them the first £1,000, which he does before he leaves the room at the end of that first 30 minutes. Tracy sits with ourselves. We explain to her that the process is going to cost her probably £2,000 to £3,000, and we'll bill her our fees as we go along, because we accept the fact that she needs to safeguard her cash flow, and we accept the fact that we don't need funds depositing with us. The next step is for the solicitor to issue lots of letters. They'll send a letter to Tracy to tell her that they're James's solicitor, and they'll send a letter to anybody else who's prepared to receive one. And those letters obviously come with a cost. After that, the solicitor then asks for another appointment with James, whereby they can then actually get to grips with the case and with the details of the case. And obviously there's a cost to that appointment. At this point, James is fairly close to being asked to deposit another £1,000. Meanwhile, Tracy has decided that she wants to launch the process and petition for the divorce, which she does in conjunction with us here at McKenzie Picave. And we bill her a couple of £100 for our involvement in building that application form. But we explained to her that the next stage that she needs to do is she needs to safeguard the children, because that's important. And so in order to do that, she also needs to approach the court and apply to the court in order to commence a child arrangements process. Again, there's a bill of a couple of £100 for her to do that with us, and off we go down the process. So we are 2 or 3 weeks in. Tracy has now applied to court for the child arrangements to be sorted out. Tracy's also launched the petition for the divorce. James's solicitors have received that petition, and they've emailed him to let him know that they've got it, and obviously they've charged him for that email. And James's solicitors have received the application for the child arrangements, and they've obviously advised James that they've received it, and they've billed him for advising him that they've received it. The next conversation is that CAFCAS, which is the Child and Family Court Advisory and Support Service, contact Tracy and contact James. They want a very initial conversation about what the situation is and what it is that each of them is trying to achieve. Now, it's relatively straightforward. They both understand that they would like to co-parent their children, which is wonderful to hear. They're just trying to find some formality in how it is that they break up the week, so they both get the opportunity to spend time with the children and organise what is in the best interest of the children. And that is lovely to hear here at McKenzie Picave, where we often find ourselves dealing with dispute. So CAFCAS, they'll have a conversation with James to understand his needs and what he's trying to achieve. They'll have a conversation with Tracy to understand her needs and what she's trying to achieve. We then arrive at what we refer to in our industry as the FHDRA, which is the First Hearing Dispute Resolution Appointment. James is in attendance, and his solicitors have recommended to him that he takes with him a barrister. Tracy is in attendance, and she takes with him a member of the McKenzie Picave team. James's barrister is going to charge £2,500 to be in attendance at that first hearing. McKenzie Picave are going to charge our client, Tracy, £200 to be in attendance at that first hearing. At the first hearing, little or nothing actually happens. It's the first opportunity for the judge to see the situation. It's the first opportunity for the judge to read the initial letter from CAFCAS to identify whether there's any risks involving the children, which in this case there are not. So the judge is quite happy. The judge says he wants to move it through to second hearing, at which case, if he's happy with what goes on and if both parents can reach an agreement in advance on what the contact arrangements are for the children and how they intend to share the co-parenting responsibilities, then he will use the second hearing in order to draw up that contact plan in the form of a court order and send everybody on their way. Ahead of that second hearing, James's solicitor works with him in order to put together what we refer to as a position statement and his proposals in terms of how he sees the contact arrangement with the children working. And the solicitor charges him and asks him to deposit some more money into their account, obviously just to cover those costs. At this point, James has deposited with them somewhere in the region of £4,000 to £5,000. Tracy works with ourselves here at McKenzie Picave, and we put together her position statement and put together her wishes in terms of how she sees the contact arrangement happening. And we send Tracy a bill for a few £100s for that exercise. CAFCAS do provide a small report, and again they have a small conversation with James, a very short one, and a very short conversation with Tracy, just to ensure that the needs of the children are being met and they both fully understand and appreciate what those needs are. At the second hearing, James's solicitors have again recommended to him, as this hearing has the potential to become the final hearing, they recommend it to him that he has a barrister in attendance at a cost of another £2,000 to £3,000. Tracy has a member of the McKenzie Picave team with her at a cost of £400, given that we may well be tied up all day. The contact arrangement is agreed. The plan with the children is agreed, how it is that each parent is going to actively co-parent and look after those children and represent their best interests. The judge writes up that in the form of a court order, and that will be issued in the fullness of time to both parents. Obviously, James via his solicitor, and Tracy direct to Tracy with a copy coming into us. So the first process is complete. The children have been organised and the children's situation has been settled. James is now happy to work with his solicitor on the divorce, which is the next stage of the process. His account at this stage stands at just under £9,000 that he spent in order for the first process to take place. And he's already lodged another £1,000 with them. Tracy has spent just over £1,000 at this stage, and she's also happy to continue to work with McKenzie Picave in order to organise the divorce. The divorce has to go through a number of stages and arrive at the decree nisi stage before Tracy and James can start to consider the third journey that they must take, which is to settle the finances. Let's just imagine for one moment how much money that Tracy and James, respectively, will spend in order to conclude these processes. And when you arrive at that figure, we entirely recommend that you consider instructing a McKenzie friend to represent you, to support you, and to work with you. In fact, we entirely recommend that you instruct McKenzie Picave. Hello, hope you liked that video. If Danny Picave Counselling is something that interests you, perhaps you're going to like that video, so why don't you watch that next? If McKenzie Picave, our family law support service, is something that is going to be of some use to you, perhaps you want to watch that video, or failing that, just get in touch, and we'll see you next time.